Your attention, please. You're an important part of any disaster response. You may find the following information critical in the event of an emergency. The future depends on protecting those among us who are vulnerable. Their best hope is your training and skill. We public health responders are the first line of defense. Terrorism, especially bioterrorism, has added new and alarming dimensions to our emergency preparedness needs. Potential targets identified within or close to Alameda County include the Bay Bridge, the San Mateo Hayward Bridge, the Oakland Coliseum Complex, Lawrence Livermore National Labs, BART tracks and stations, the Oakland International Airport, and the Port of Oakland. In addition, the FBI warns that any public buildings, shopping malls, schools, utilities, refineries, or chemical and nuclear research facilities may also be targets. The guidelines for your role in a response may vary depending on the exact nature of an event and its location. Since 2002, the Alameda County Public Health Department has been working with city, county, and other stakeholders on plans to respond as quickly as possible to preserve health and prevent the spread of disease in case of a bioterrorism attack or other such public health emergencies. These plans are referred to as post-exposure prophylactic medical countermeasures. An essential part of this process involves dispensing medicines or other essential survival support to large numbers of the population. The points of dispensing sites where this takes place are known as pods. City officials have the primary responsibility for all pods within their jurisdictions. Alameda County is responsible for any pods located in unincorporated areas of the county. Together, city and county officials have identified and evaluated many potential pod sites. While most cities in Alameda County have 1 or 2 pods within their city limits, some have as many as 7. Pods are generally set up at school gymnasiums and big auditoriums where large numbers of people can easily come and go. In the event of a public health disaster, you'll be notified by automated phone system, such as AC Alert, or Phone Tree if the phones are working. If not, you may need to listen to the radio, TV, or social media for instructions. As a pod worker, you may be asked to report immediately to a pod, or you may be requested to stand by. Pods will be open 24 hours a day and staffed in 12-hour shifts. The basic plan for post-exposure prophylaxis calls for a full 60-day cycle of medical countermeasure treatments. Depending on the situation, this may be extended for weeks. Be prepared. When reporting to a pod, wear comfortable clothes and always bring your driver's license and work IDs along with any personal medications you might require over the course of the emergency. At the pod, you'll sign in and be given a role with duties explained in your job action sheet. Efforts will be made to fit your professional skills, but every role is crucial. You'll immediately be provided medication for yourself, and if take-home prescriptions are involved, additional medication for those in your household. The most extreme case, and the standard for which we train, is bioterrorism anthrax attack. In an anthrax attack, the maximum window for emergency treatment is around 48 hours after exposure. This means teams will have to move fast. Once an event is identified and the Strategic National Stockpile is activated, pallets of antibiotic medications will arrive at the state RSS within 12 hours. These will immediately be shipped to your regional distribution site, or RDS warehouse, and distributed to individual pods. This gives us a small window to dispense antibiotic medical countermeasures to every single individual in the affected area. Treating an entire urban community within a small time frame will require everyone to perform their duties quickly and efficiently. Why the rush? If a person is exposed to a deadly biological agent, such as anthrax, plague, or tularemia, their odds of survival are greatly improved if they receive protective medication before becoming symptomatic. It is important for you to understand the new chain of custody. The Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, or ASPR, ASPR, will deliver medical supplies to designated state RSS facilities, who then deliver them to the regional distribution sites, who then deliver them in individual pallets to the pods. The new packaging system used by ASPR puts all medicine on a single wrapped pallet as part of the same lot number. So we no longer have to break down or repackage every container or match lot numbers with individuals. If we know which pod a person received their medication, we will automatically know their lot number. This allows us to deploy full pallets of medical countermeasures much faster. Of course, it also makes it that much more important to track the pallet lot numbers correctly. This strategy of providing preventative medication to the exposed while still healthy is called post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP. For PEP to be maximally effective, exposed persons need to be prophylaxed as soon as possible after exposure. Time is critical. In vulnerable individuals, symptoms may begin to appear as early as 24 hours. Simply said, the more people we prophylax in the shortest amount of time, the more lives we potentially save. A swift and aggressive prophylaxis campaign in our community has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. Your participation as a mass prophylaxis responder can make a huge difference. But be aware that everyone participating in an emergency may need to change their normal operating procedures. The mission, getting medications to the masses, sounds simple. But in the event of a large release of weaponized anthrax across the county, we may need to prophylax the entire county population, citizens and visitors. In Alameda County, this means treating 1.7 million people in a little over a day. Unlike many public health services, this mission will focus on mass care rather than individualized clinical care. Many of you are experienced health professionals whose instincts may draw you towards reassuring bedside conversation. But remember, speed equals survival. In a real event, energy and emotions will be running high. A balance must be sought between the time pressure and individual service. This is easy to forget, especially during drills, where cooperation and positive experience are more imperative than speed. So everyone must use their best judgment to expedite dispensing of medications while maintaining a reasonable standard of interaction with the public. The number one rule for all pod staff in a time-critical emergency is be positive and supportive, but always keep the line moving. Pod managers, section chiefs, group supervisors, and unit leaders should always be on the lookout for ways to improve bottlenecks and speed up flow. In the most extreme circumstances, authorities may choose to lift record-keeping requirements and move to a paperless model. Using full pallets with single lot numbers makes this much easier. Just remember that many less time-sensitive emergencies will still require keeping records for tracking medication dispensing. Wherever you work in a pod, your job is to support the rapid flow of dispensing and to maintain quality public health care to our citizens and visitors for the full 60-day response cycle. Let's take a look at the timeline. Once an emergency is recognized, the ASPR will activate the Strategic National Stockpile and deliver the first round of medical countermeasures to designated state RSS, receiving, staging, and storage sites within 12 hours. These will be single-lot pallets of individual unit-of-use bottles, each containing a 10-day supply of tablets of doxycycline, or Doxy, and ciprofloxacin, or Cipro. While the medication is in motion from the federal to state to regional and finally to the pod sites will be activated according to the federally defined Incident Command System, or ICS. Pods will then distribute emergency medical countermeasures to everyone, citizen or visitor in the affected area. Individuals may pick up for families or groups, but they will need to have a list of names, ages, and any medication allergies or medical complications. Every person in an affected area must be given a bottle and begin taking the medication immediately. Only those who have life-threatening allergies to doxycycline or ciprofloxacin should refrain. Those individuals must report the life-threatening allergy to medical consultation, where they will be given a written prescription for other antibiotics, which should also be filled and taken as soon as possible. Immediately following complete delivery of the pallets of 10-day unit-of-use bottles, ASPR will begin shipping pallets with 50-day unit-of-use bottles. These shipments include not only ciprofloxacin and doxycycline bottles, but also additional resources such as amoxicillin, anthrax vaccine, or hospital support supplies. Once the pod site completes dispensing of the 10-day bottles, it will begin dispensing the 50-day bottles. Individuals will need to return to the pod for a second visit to pick up this longer-term supply. Anyone who is taking ciprofloxacin or doxycycline and having a non-life-threatening allergic reaction may be able to switch to amoxicillin at this time. At any point, anyone displaying signs of complications due to anthrax exposure should report to their local hospital. To recap, within 24 hours, everyone should receive and begin taking a 10-day supply of medical countermeasures. Then, before that supply runs out, they should return and pick up a 50-day supply for a total treatment period of 60 days. It should go without saying that people should not skip or miss their scheduled daily dosage for the full 60 days. If vaccine injections are made available, pods will shift into a vaccination mode, which will require every individual to visit the pod. Depending on the event and availability, this may be concurrent with the 50-day supply dispensing. Note that some medications, like vaccines, may require refrigeration and temperature control. Trained medical personnel, like the Medical Reserve Corps or public health nurses, are used to dealing with cold chain considerations and should always be consulted if there are any issues with shipping or storage. Once dispensing is completed, pods will shift to maintenance and recovery. If someone loses their supply or finds themselves separated from their supply, they will report to the pod for additional medications. If there is an oversupply of medications, those should be returned to the pod for disposal. Remember that these medications are considered controlled substances, and they have a limited effective shelf life. Under no circumstances should the medications be flushed into the sewers, where they may poison the water supply. No matter what your role in the emergency response, you will be operating within the Incident Command System. ICS has 5 activities at work in the pod: command, operations, planning, logistics, and finance administrative support. Command is handled at each pod by staff under the direction of a site manager responsible for overall pod operations. The site manager is the primary on-site decision maker. Site managers and their command staff will communicate beyond the pod to the City Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, which will in turn communicate up the chain of command with operational area, regional, state, and federal officials. Local law enforcement will provide security and liaison with pod command staff. The Alameda County Sheriff will be focused on community-wide support and make officers available as needed. The remaining pod sections carry out the dispensing mission. Operations are the center stage of the pod mission. CERT volunteers or Medical Reserve Corps volunteers will mostly be assigned to jobs in the operations branch. Your role is crowd control and dispensing the medication. The planning section keeps ahead of pod operations by anticipating needs and problem solving in advance. The planning section monitors operations and reports to the pod site manager, and, if designated, to city or county EOC and DOC officials. The logistics section manages personnel, supplies, and equipment. From medicines to clipboards, they'll make sure your station or area is supplied with everything you need. The finance admin section tracks and records everything. They're responsible for purchasing supplies and maintaining records of resources and personnel needed to keep the pod functioning. You might think of the pod as a public service business. It works in two phases: front of the house, where staff is dealing directly with the public, and back of the house, where staff is supporting the front of the house operation. In the front of the house, operations are teamed with planning. Operations carries out the critical mission of dispensing, while planning handles the paperwork and monitoring to support it. Behind the scenes, at the back of the house, logistics is teamed with finance. Logistics supplies the operation, and finance accounts for it. All of these sections work interdependently under the supervision of command. Keep in mind that the structure of a pod must be flexible. In some situations, not all pod positions will need to be filled for the pod to function. Now let's take a look at the pod from the public's perspective. The pod site has 4 basic flow tracks. Most people will go straight through the express track to receive doxycycline. Then there is the table track that distributes both Doxy and Cipro for those who need to pick up a mix of medications. Then there is a family track for those with children needing pediatric suspension medications or crushing instructions to deal with swallowing difficulties. Finally, there is the assistance track for the small percentage of people with life-threatening complications requiring special medical attention or communication. The pod process is meant to be fast and simple. 4 easy steps. Fill out a form. Have it reviewed for life-threatening allergies or complications. Receive medication from the express, table, or family tracks, and turn in your form with name and medication listed together. And if you need special assistance, there are medical and communication experts, like translators, available to help. Under the latest version of the pod guidance, even those with mild allergies should begin emergency Doxy or Cipro medication as soon as possible. Exposure to anthrax is far worse than mild allergic symptoms. Admittedly, this simple flow can appear complicated when laid out to maximize space in a building, but the basic flow remains the same. The first person the public encounters is the greeter. As the first face in the pod, they organize the crowd while generally watching for illness or emergencies that might negatively impact the flow. From this point forward, we'll refer to the public as our clients, and we should try to treat them that way. The greeter is the first part of the fill-out form station. Greeters need to monitor the whole line, not just the front. Walk up and down the entire line. One greeter should always be stationed at the very start of the line. The rest of the fill-out forms team includes flow control staff who hand out forms and ensure that clients fill them out before proceeding. If you encounter someone who's sick outside the pod, quickly separate them from the rest of the crowd. And don't send them into the pod, but get them to an outside medical team. If they're ill, they'll be transported to a healthcare facility for treatment. People may have a lot of questions. Always be reassuring, but try to refer them to signage or to printed material they'll receive further ahead. And then, if there's time, calmly answer their questions, but only if you're certain you know the answer and it will contribute to the flow. As early as possible, clients should be given antibiotic screening forms to complete. Clients may pick up medicine for other family members, but they'll need to complete screening information for each person. It's difficult to fill out forms while standing. Make sure you have more than enough pens and clipboards to stay ahead of the next station. That next station, show forms, is usually the first bottleneck in pod flow. The forms reviewer mission is to quickly check the screening form and direct people to the appropriate track. The top of the form is the doxy section. Most people will be given doxycycline, which will be indicated by all no answers in step 1. All no answers in step 1 go right to the express track. Any yes answer in step 1 for doxy allergies means you continue to step 2 for that person. Step 2 will determine if Cipro can be used for that person. All no answers in step 2 can go to the table track for a mix of medication. Questions 4 and 5 and 9 and 10 screen for pediatrics and swallowing difficulties. A yes answer to any of these questions will be directed to the family track. The family track has both doxy and Cipro along with pediatric suspensions. The special assistance track is only for those who, according to the form, are not medically eligible for either doxy or Cipro. The forms are designed so that any yes answers will stick out. Forms aren't perfect, and people may be tempted to choose yes answers unnecessarily. Always confirm the reason for a yes. A single confirmed yes means immediate redirection to the appropriate track. Try to be efficient and fast, but most importantly, be accurate. At the pickup medicine station, clients will be given their medicine and medicine for their families if appropriate. The anthrax scenario calls for pill dispensing. Other situations may require vaccine injections. Injection pods will have a slightly different dispensing plan, but all other parts of the pod should be roughly the same. Pills are easier because one person can pick up medications for entire households. The first round of dispensing is a bottle with a 10-day unit of use supply of pills. Later, after the initial coverage is complete, clients will need to return to pick up the 50-day unit of use supply bottle. Adult dispensing is fairly simple, but pediatric medications can require more instruction. Since dispensing is the second likely bottleneck in the pod, delays at this station should be kept to a minimum. Previously, pediatric suspensions were to be reconstituted at the pod by staff. However, the guidance has changed to allow parents and guardians to reconstitute the suspensions at home using tap water. This should help speed up the family track. With their medications in hand, clients will drop off their forms at the turn-in form station and then exit. Only now is there time for questions and additional information. Try to place the question and answer area near, but not blocking the exit. This is where the public will pose questions to information officers. Additional written materials should be within easy reach. To keep the dispensing tracks moving fast, the assistance track is split off to the side into two service areas: medical consultation and special assistance. At medical consultation, a clinical healthcare provider can make necessary medical decisions and write prescriptions. Sick patients will be evacuated to a healthcare facility. Allergy concerns are typically resolved either at medical consulting or by calling the public health department for more guidance. The final station in the assistance track is the special assistance area, a one-stop catch-all for any remaining concerns, both medical and otherwise. Its mission is to handle the problems other stations can't handle that might disrupt flow. Use the assistance track sparingly. Each special case consumes extra time and resources. Candidates for special assistance include those requiring help with communication, mobility, or sensory impairment. Use common sense. Not all people in wheelchairs are special assistance cases. And just because someone speaks another language doesn't mean that they require translation services. Most clients will have a functional understanding of English that can be supplemented by printed material in their native languages available at the exit. So, be diligent not to overwhelm the assistance track. Depending on the disaster, mental health may also be a special assistance consideration. Psychological first aid can be as important as medical prophylaxis. Large pods usually have staff assigned to mental health. Typically, they're either roaming the pod or in the special assistance area. And while you're busy taking care of others, don't forget to take care of yourself. Take food and water breaks when scheduled, and remember your own regular prescription medications. You might also bring personal basics to have at hand, such as aspirin. No matter where you are in the pod, always do your best to communicate quickly and keep the lines moving. Remember that the plan described here addresses a typical anthrax scenario, but a point of dispensing pod is a useful system for many other types of public health disasters. So, to review quickly, greeters organize people as they arrive while forms controllers distribute forms and pens. Both are on the lookout for any emergencies, like ill clients, who should be taken out of line and assisted. Forms reviewers sort out the 1 in 100 or fewer special cases requiring assistance. Forms review staff should work fast and always be busy, since they often dictate the speed of the line and therefore the survival rate. Dispensing is the primary mission, so those handing out medications must work efficiently. Pre-bagged medications, signs, and printed materials help, but most important is teamwork. And if you're answering questions at the end, try to draw people out of the pod and make sure they don't congregate at the exit. The assistance track, which includes medical consultation and special assistance, is meant only to supplement the dispensing operation. These services don't take the place of a family doctor or healthcare facility. The assistance track is primarily for the small number of clients whose health would be critically threatened by receiving medication normally through the express track. For everyone else, working on supplies, record keeping, planning, or support, the pod doesn't function without you. Everyone performs a key role in getting medication to the masses. And everyone affects the speed of the line. Always be reassuring, but keep the line moving, because speed equals survival. Advanced training for station leaders, command staff, and individual ICS sections is available in other modules. Your participation and continued training for public health disasters helps ensure that we're as ready as we can be when our citizens and our communities need us. This pod video series was brought to you by the Alameda County Public Health Department, Office of Public Health Emergency Preparedness, in collaboration with Applied Creative Training.